Hello, and welcome to another UKColumn interview. My name's Debi Evans. And for those of you that might not know me, I'm a retired nurse, I'm a past government advisor, I'm a mum, and I'm a granny. And that's why I'm particularly grateful to the three young men that have joined me today. Who's listening to you? What can you say? Who's watching you? What can you do? Is it okay to think? And if it's all right for us to think, what can we think about without repercussions? Do we live in 2023 or are we living in 1984? Many who are watching and who are regular members of UKColumn News will know that we have been reporting on censorship, eradication of free speech, thought crime, and terrorism, counter-terrorism, domestic terrorism for many, many months and many years, actually. Brian Gerrish was first talking about Prevent. We're going to be talking about Prevent today, back in 2015. But many people might not realise that Prevent came to my attention and very, very quickly to the centre of my radar because of the courage of three young men who have stood up and told their story about what they've been going through. Not only have they been telling the story, but they've been supporting one another. And I'm delighted, therefore, to introduce you to a very brave teenager called Saed, who was looking forward to his further education, studying A-levels, and his life was completely changed. So first of all, I'm going to introduce you to Saed, and we've blurred him out to preserve his identity because he has his whole life in front of him and there will be potential litigation ahead of him. And we've also blurred out his supporter as well to preserve his identity and confidentiality. So without further ado, let me bring on screen for a very brief introduction. Saed, thank you so much for agreeing to speak to UKColumn. Would you like to just briefly introduce yourself?
My name is Saed, and I was studying a further education course at a college within the United Kingdom, when suddenly I was threatened with Prevent for simply expressing the opinion in class that a transgender person should not be able to use the opposite sex bathroom because I thought it was wrong. I don't have any hate towards any group or anyone, but I was just expressing this opinion. I said in class, the way I said this, I said, can anyone identify as any gender they want? The class was like, yeah, of course. And I said, okay. And can anyone who identifies as any gender they want use the bathroom of the sex they identify with? To a response I received, yes, of course. So then I said, okay, on that note, I identify as a girl and I will be using the girls' changing rooms. To which the class was like, what? You can't say that. Eventually, I was referred to the safeguarding lead of my college, who said that it was a transphobic comment. I said to her, this is not transphobic. I was just making a point about people using a different bathroom for nefarious reasons, which, has been the case many times, unfortunately. And then I was told that this is against the Equality Act. But if my college actually read the Equality Act, it doesn't actually mention anything about people who identify as a different sex being able to use different bathrooms. It specifically excludes that for obvious reasons. Of course, this is the law. And I then said, that my faith is of the Christian faith, and I do not believe in certain agendas going on today. People are free to believe that on their own time, but I'm not going to be taking part in this. No disrespect to anyone. To which I was told that my Bible is not relevant. I said, this is very offensive and this is a discrimination. And then I got told, well, I could have this conversation with Prevent. Eventually, I complained to another member of staff who was like some deputy in the school. And I was told by her to wait a week and I would receive an apology. And eventually I received an apology. And I was told to wait a week and a meeting would happen. And in that meeting, I received an apology. I accepted, the apology, and I thought I would move on with my life, studying very hard to get the grades I needed in my course. And then a month later, a Prevent officer came into my college to speak to me without notifying me in the first place.
Saed, I want to just stop you for a second because I do want to go into much more detail about your story, because it really, it's shocking what has happened to you because of the impact that it's had on your education. But before I do, I just want to bring on screen James. You are one of the founder members of Students Against Tyranny, and you've been helping Saed and supporting him. But not only have you been helping and supporting Saed, you also help and support many other students who are finding themselves isolated and censored for all sorts of different reasons. I'm really grateful that you could join us today. Welcome, and tell us a bit about how you've been able to help Saed, and also a bit more about Students Against Tyranny.
Thank you so much for having me on. So I founded Students Against Tyranny on the 5th of September 2021, and it was originally started as a kind of social group for young people who didn't want to get vaccinated, because at the time a lot of them were facing societal pressures, whether that be from the government, from the media, from their parents, from their families, from the schools, pretty much from all walks of life. And they were all being pressured to get the jab, and a lot of them didn't want to. And so we understood that as students, you might feel quite lonely and isolated in the sense that all your friends are getting it, or your friends are pressuring you to get it. And so we founded this organization as a social group to bring like-minded young people together so they didn't feel so alone and isolated, and they could kind of have I don't want to use the term safe space, but it was a safe space for them to have their own opinions without fears of repercussions or being branded as a far-right extremist, an outcast. So that's how it started, and it has since transpired now into an activism movement of young people opposed to institutionalized Marxism and the shutdown of free speech within universities. I think the harsh reality is that Saed's story isn't a new one. There are literally, we get tons of phone calls every single week from students and young people who are being bullied, persecuted by the university establishment, by their friends, by Antifa, for having these so-called right-wing extremist views. The extremist views that a man cannot contain female genitals. So that's kind of how it started. I mean, there's a story we've been working on now for the past year of a young lad who's also anonymous, who goes by the name of John Christian. And we don't have time to go through his full story, but it all started because he said he was pro-Brexit. And in response to that, you have faculty, you had students who were all conspiring to engage him in a debate, and then when he would debate them back, they would find something to be offended over and report him for it. Like, for example, there was they would engage him in a debate about the Irish abortion referendum, because if anyone doesn't know what that means, it kind of legalized abortion in Ireland. I think it was 2019. I think it was. I'm not too sure on that, but they're the ones who started the debate, and he responded, he debated back, and they still reported him for it, and he went for a disciplinary. It ended up, after 5 years of studying for his PhD, they refused to assess his thesis, all because he had his right-wing conservative viewpoints. And then you've got another person, James SS, who was kicked off his course for stating there are only two genders. You've got another one of our friends who is also going to remain anonymous for the time being, who has been bullied and persecuted and made a meme around his university and forced him to leave, right? They bullied him so much he's had to leave, all because he said that that transgender ideologies is grooming kids. It's absolutely disgusting. But this isn't just this isn't just being done by Antifa. This is being done at an institutional level where free speech is being shut down and Marxist values are the ones that are being upheld.
It really does sound as though debate has gone out of the window. I thought that this was why youngsters went to college, went to university in order to debate, in order to throw around different ideas. But that obviously seems to have gone. Now, at this point, I want to introduce Dylan, because Dylan, we've also blurred your identity out because you are a friend of Saed's, and you've been a great support. And I know Saed has spoken to me independently and said how grateful he is to you for your support. Dylan, how did this all present to you? How did you get to find out about it? And what are your thoughts about what's happened to Saed?
I'd say, to go from the beginning, I once met at Saed in an outreach with who are associated with Ramis's team. He's a rapper in the freedom movement who protested against the jabs and lockdowns. I met at that outreach march back in April the 15th this year. They were going on about our cashless societies and digital IDs, so I met him, but I did know him online, fine. So we met in person and we discussed about what we know. And then there was another meetup, and then he told me about his situations, how he got in trouble, and like, maybe I shouldn't be that surprised how they kicked out Saed for basically saying about there's only two genders, or that a man and can't be a woman. Maybe that's not going to be surprising to me or anyone who's just basically in favor of truth, at least as a bare minimum. But to know that how they've been handling this, that's what's shocking to me. And obviously, Saed is not going to be the first, and he's not going to be the last. There's going to be more who are going to be persecuted for such ideas. Maybe not the same words that he says, but other ideas too. And it could possibly get even more worse unless we all do something about it, at least in our own way, that would count for something.
Yeah, I think very, very wise words there, Dylan. And, we've only just scraped the tip of the iceberg with Saed's story, because Saed, take us through a bit more of your story, because it gets worse, doesn't it? They originally apologized to you, but it was conditional. You were asked to do certain things, weren't you? Tell us a bit more about what happened to you after you'd made these comments in class.
So after that, I thought, panic over now. The college has, a representative of the college has kind of, unofficially apologized. I'm just going to go my way now. So I went my way, and then about a month later, this prevent officer comes, and the first thing he asks, really weirdly, was, I'll say what he said first. He said, "Hello, I'm from Prevent. There's no need to be worried. I'm not going to go and take you off now. Prevent is a scheme which blah, blah, blah." And I thought, okay, right. And then he said something which really stuck with me. And I thought, why would he associate this with me? He said, "Do you think there's a Jewish conspiracy to control over the world?" And I thought, what a weird question to ask. I said, no, I don't think, I don't have any hate towards any ethnic group. I said, no, I simply just believe that someone of a certain sex shouldn't be using the bathroom of an opposite gender for, nefarious reasons. And which, of course, is happening a lot these days. And then he went on further, and he just said that he just said that I should, change my opinions. I'm prepared for things like this. I know how to debate. But I was careful with what to say, because I know how, with Prevent, it all starts with like, oh, we're not here to hurt you, we're just here to listen. Then you say something, and then suddenly it turns into a bigger investigation. And I know how to deal with these people. So I was quite quiet, and I managed to get out of a meeting. I asked for his number, his badge number, and I've got it. But then what happened afterwards was it was just quiet for a couple months. I came into college, and until March of 2023, when all of a sudden I was forced to sign a behavior contract, which said that I would promise not to say anything offensive or irrelevant in class, and the college reserves the right to deem what is offensive or not. Of course, I had problems with this, and this was actually coming away from the topic which we talked about, moving on to the topic of disagreeing with certain narratives around the world. In my one of my classrooms, there was a statue of Tony Blair in the back of it. And I made a comment, and I said, if we've got a statue of Tony Blair, who's, in my opinion, a war criminal, and who's done horrible things to many different people, I said, can we have a statue of Vladimir Putin as well? What's the difference? One invades Iraq, one invades Ukraine. With all due respect, what's the difference? And I was told that, you can't say that. How dare you compare Iraq to Ukraine? I thought, okay, right. So then I was told about how that's an offensive comment, and I was accused of watching Russian state media in my spare time, right? Russia Today. And I was told, that I should sign it or else face disciplinary actions. And when I tried to protest, I was told, this meeting's ended, sign it or face disciplinary action. Of course, I didn't sign it because I am a man of principles. I have principles. And then, unfortunately, what happened a few weeks later was I was actually suspended for a comment I made in banter, and I maintain, it was in banter towards a young lady who happened to have, who happened to have a Jewish dad, or allegedly a Jewish dad. Bearing in mind, this girl had made several banterous comments of her own, and actually posted what was tantamount, I think, to inappropriate images of people under 18 on her Instagram account. I thought, it was just some banter which I engaged in, and it was a mistake I made, I admit, but I didn't really think that it would go as far as it did. So the college suspended me based on that, but then a few days later, they sent a letter saying that it's been cleared transphobic comments have also been made. And I thought, this is quite weird now, because what I thought was somewhat of a disciplinary reason has now turned into a political reason for suspending me. Now, bearing in mind, these social media comments were made in Snapchat, and I actually apologized, to like a schoolmate, right? And I had, apologized personally, and it was, I thought it was just a silly, little thing teenagers do on Snapchat. I didn't really think anything of it. And it took about a week for it to be reported, which I thought was quite odd. I'll get to that a bit in a minute, because I think what happens next is even more serious. So what happens next was I was told, that I was suspended from college, and then a police investigation would be made against me for being involved in a hate crime. They labeled it a hate crime. And I was told I had to come to a disciplinary meeting. I came to a disciplinary meeting, and in the disciplinary meeting, I was told, that I needed to either engage fully with Prevent, or else, be summarily dismissed from college. And I thought, this is absolutely not right. This is just an incident on Snapchat, which has been blown way out of proportion. And I even stated myself that this girl who had made these accusations had actually goaded me to, engage in banter in the first place. And the other point was there was other things brought up at the disciplinary meeting, which made me think that I wasn't being done, for anti-Semitism, which is what it was called, but I was being accused of other, about my political views, my faith views as well. And I was asked repeatedly at this meeting, do you think the Bible is above the law? Do you still think the Bible is above the law? And I refused to answer that because I know that's a loaded question against my faith. I was also told that I was told a bunch of accusations that I believe I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not properly learning in class because I'm refusing to believe what the teacher teaches and instead, forming my own opinions based on what I read online. I was accused of many things, which I'm actually there's so many of it, I'm struggling to recount them all because it was a very traumatizing event. And then I realized, the direction the meeting was going in. It was essentially, the college forcing their opinions on me. And I said at the end, okay, I understand, that there's, you don't want me to have my own opinion and I'm not allowed my opinion in college. Why don't I stop, speaking about my views in college and I express my views outside of college in, I don't know, with my friends or, just outside of college, which I thought was a fair comment to make. The college, or a certain person of the college turned around to me and said, how dare you? How dare you have your own opinion after all we've done for you by trying to force you to engage with Prevent, by letting you have a second chance here, by, suspending you and not immediately expelling you, how dare you have your own opinion? And these were her words. Like, this was quite shocking. And she said, actually, just for thinking that you can privately think your Christian beliefs and your beliefs about so-called conspiracy theories, we're going to suspend you for another week and we're going to see what we're going to do with you then. How dare you think that privately? Not express them in classroom, which, by the way, I think as long as it's done respectfully, people have their right to do. But express them in your own personal time. I was quite upset about this because I thought, this is just ludicrous now. Like what am I even forgot what I was in trouble for in the first place. Was it something I said on Snapchat? Was it just for being me? Then a week rolls round and I was actually told by the college that I was to be expelled because very simply I was told, that I would be expelled for lying to the college because apparently, they spoke to this girl and this girl said that she never spoke to me in the first place and it was on my own accord, which was a complete lie, and I've got evidence to prove that. But anyway, that's another story. I was also told that for refusing to change my beliefs and therefore refusing to meaningfully engage with a Prevent course, that I would be expelled from college because I refused to change my beliefs. I said, this is wrong. This is freedom of thought. And they were like, well, no, your opinions are disrupting other people's learning. Your freedom of thought isn't reflective of the college values and is undermining us because, we've given you so many chances. They actually thought they were being nice by making me sign a contract and forcing me to engage with Prevent. They said, well, we're being nice to you because we're trying to get you to see the error of your ways by doing that. And they said, how could you be so ungrateful to us? This really reminds me of what, the Soviets did or what, many regimes around the world would do to innocent people who protest against them. And this is happening in the UK. So I protested and I said, this isn't right. Then a day later, I got a formal email to say that, you're being dismissed now for saying these, for using to change your opinions and for a bunch of other things. And the tone of the letter actually changed to say that, well, we just don't think the college is the right place for you. Because this is what, if you look at the people who commit many horrible crimes, they initially are very proud of their attacks. But then when they've realized that they're getting criticism for it, they suddenly say, oh, well, we never did that in the first place, or it wasn't like that. Look what the other person did. This is exactly what my school has been doing to me. They've been saying they've committed awful civil liberties violations against me, and are now claiming that, oh, well, it just didn't work out for you at college. It didn't work out for you here. And they actually sent quite a patronizing email to say that, oh, by the way, we know we've scuppered all like your life. The tone of it was like, yeah, we've scuppered all like your life plans and everything now, but feel free to come drop by college for a careers interview appointment, which I thought was so patronizing. My mental health was really at a low point here. I was even, contemplating suicide based over what has happened to me at college. And I was told, quite mockably by the college, why don't you just get a job? And I thought, this isn't, I had plans to further my education, to study a further education course. And now this has happened, which is absolutely disgraceful.
Saed, can I just jump in there? Because I think it's really important that our audience knows. I mean, they're hearing it for themselves. And clearly you are a very intelligent, articulate, measured young man, and you're absolutely right when you say, this appears to be thought crime. You're being punished for thought crime. But I just want everybody to understand that you were predicted A grades, weren't you? I mean, you had big ambitions, and you've just suddenly been expelled, and you've had to confront a prevent officer that I'm presuming you weren't told was going to come and visit you. What actually happened? Were you in class? Were you suddenly summoned? Or how did you meet that prevent officer? And did you find out who the prevent officer was? And let's remind our audience that the prevent scheme, the prevent system is to prevent young people from becoming radicalized, and they do an awful lot of work with the Home Office, counter-terrorism, domestic terrorism, if you want to call it that, and they look at extreme right-wing views. So all of a sudden, you're just expressing an opinion, which is your right to do, and then you get a prevent officer. How did this suddenly happen, and how were you informed of this?
I wasn't informed. My parents got a call the day before saying that not even a prevent officer, just someone by the name of so and so will come into my college. And my dad was obviously confused about this, and he told me, "Oh, apparently you've got a meeting with so and so at college." I thought, okay, I haven't heard that name before. Maybe I don't really know what that is. So I came in, and this prevent officer was there, and he introduced himself, and that's what happened. My main concern is, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I don't, have involvement with, the government, the police. I don't, really understand why this has happened to someone who's just expressed his, Christian opinions at school. Eventually, just a bit more about prevent. A few months later, as a condition of coming back to college, because what the college did was they kind of trapped me with forcing me to engage with prevent, and then suddenly pulling the plug and saying, well, actually, you can't come back. So I really wanted to go back to college to finish off my courses. So I said, yes, okay, I'll do anything. I'll engage with prevent, despite, begrudgingly. But yeah, okay, if it means going back to college, to getting my courses, because I didn't really have a choice. I was kind of, forced to do it. So with this prevent guy, he actually came around to my house, and the tone of because there was two meetings, the first meeting and the second one a few months later. The second meeting, the tone was very different. He was visibly, like, his manner was different. He wasn't so, cocky and proud and I think I'm better than you sort of person. He was quite apologetic, and he said, I'm very sorry to hear what's happened at your college. And he actually said that I'm not here to get you to change your opinions. I just want you to see the other side of things. And he actually said that, his words were, Prevent doesn't deal with conspiracy theories. People could have their opinions. People could go on protests. People could do all of these things. We just want people to understand that there's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet, and just to research both sides before you come to an opinion. Now, that's a far cry from, saying, well, do you believe there's a Jewish conspiracy to run the world? That's a bit of a far cry from it. And that kind of gave me the impression that there's been some misunderstanding maybe between my college, Prevent, and the police or whoever, and someone somewhere has messed up. If Prevent are apologizing to you, saying that we're very sorry for what's happened at your college, I think I know the college has messed up big time. If Prevent are saying that, then something very nefarious and something very I would say quite evil has gone on behind the scenes for that to happen.
And also, Saed, I've got to come back to your mental health, because you've already said earlier on in the interview that your mental health suffered and that at some point you did feel suicidal, and that's extremely troubling. And thank goodness you're still here to tell your story. But tell us what kind of impact it has had on your mental health and how it has affected you. And were you offered any support at all while you were going through all of this?
No support. I was offered no support at all by my place of education. I was offered no support. I was ridiculed. I was mocked. It was an awful time. I was going through it for a lot back then, and it was a very dark time in my life. What kind of worried me the most was how the college had took this upon themselves to report it to the police. A simple exchange of messages between two classmates at school, to the police, rather than dealing with it themselves and saying, what, I think you've, offended so-and-so, could you just apologize? And if that was all that it was, of course I would have apologized. I take accountability for things. I already, it was a domestic issue essentially between, like two classmates, and I made amends, domestically. I apologized. I said, I'm very, sorry if I offended you. And this was without me being forced to or anything. And for the college to blow that up, to the police, because let's be honest, we all have friends. We all, have ups and downs in our friendships. We all, have maybe said things which, maybe you shouldn't have said in hindsight, but to escalate it to the police. And actually we contacted an ex police inspector from the Welsh police, I believe, who actually expressed the outrage that a simple comment of banter has been escalated, to the police, when that just required a listen, don't do that again sort of conversation. But in all fairness, though, because I was very worried, because I was, I thought, am I going to go to prison for this? I was just a teenager, and I thought, because apparently you can go to prison for up to 2 years for sending messages online these days. Of course, this is the way our country is, which is not right at all, in my opinion. But the police were actually were quite understanding, I have to say. They said they came to my house and they specifically told me that we're not going to charge you with anything. They said that we could see, you've made a mistake, and we're here to kind of listen to you and get your side of a story, and which was really surprising. And they said we're not we're not going to charge you or anything. We're just here to let you know that obviously this is what's happened, and maybe think before you send something like that online. And I thought, okay, fair enough. That's obviously the police's decision, and that's quite good of them, despite everything which has gone on. But then the police actually said that it was their, decision to not charge, and it was they've decided, not to do that because I was so young. That their words actually was this: what would arresting you, what would filing criminal charges against you do? They said all that's going to do is further, isolate you at a already, quite difficult time for you, which I thought actually made a lot of sense. And it was quite, shocking that the college didn't think of that as well. At my college, because the police actually made it quite clear to my college that nothing was going to happen, and this, was, the police involvement there was finished. The college was actually, they were quite angry that the police had just decided to leave it at that. And they were visibly quite, they wanted something to happen to me. And of course, the rule of law prevailed, and they didn't get the reaction they were looking for. So the college were quite rude to me about it, and just said, well, you're expelled now, because that's what they do. When Prevent has actually told them, because the story is quite complicated in the sense that it started with the college, thinking, oh, we can get Prevent on him, we could do what we want. And it ended with the police and Prevent actually saying, you know what, we're not involved now. Sorry, this has gone too far. And, the college then took things into their own hands and, decided to expel me, which was quite horrible. But yeah.
Saed, college, I went to nursing school, but many of my friends went to college and university, and it's a place not just to debate and to learn, but it's also a place to socialise and get to know your peer group and share interests and have fun, happy times. How did all of this impact on your peer group, on your friends that you'd been at college with? How did they treat you? And indeed, are you still in contact with your classmates, or effectively when you were expelled, you kind of lost contact with your peer group as well?
I was very scared because I was at that time, I thought, okay, if a college are claiming to, of course, we know the real reason was for my beliefs, but if a college are expelling me and claiming that it's because of a message I sent online, I thought, how many, other messages have I, maybe sent online, or how many other, I guess, Instagram posts of political kind of background have I posted, or political tweets, which, the college might get a hold of. And in one of the disciplinary meetings, they actually accused me of talking about Andrew Tate, which obviously I have no recollection really of showing support for Andrew Tate. And it was everything which kind of I posted was getting back to them, which made me kind of come to the conclusion that some student at my school was essentially being a snitch and reporting things because, they don't like me. And I was very scared because I thought, are all my friends turning on me? What was happening? But I had to I just made sure, maybe don't speak to as many people and only keep a few close friends, which, looking back on it, was probably the right thing to have done in that climate. I've got, I'm still in contact with a few close friends from the college. I remember quite, I think quite fittingly at the end of all of this was the fact that the college likes to talk about diversity and inclusion, but of course, you don't include me kind of thing. But two Muslim boys who know that my religion is different from theirs, okay, actually stuck with me throughout all of it, were always messaging me to support me, always made it clear that they're my friends and, they're going to support me, and actually made sure that, I was all right throughout all of this. And if a college wants to talk about diversity and inclusion, then they should take a page out of, maybe their own students' books, who are putting aside, their religion to go and help someone of an opposite, religion. And I think that's quite, ironic that all these big institutes which go on about, wokeism and inclusion and diversity are actually doing the opposite. And yeah, it's just something which I'd never forget, really.
And I'd like to say thank you to your two friends, your two Muslim friends as well, for supporting you, because I think you shine a beacon of light into how things should be done. We've talked about Prevent a lot on UKColumn, and how basically any one of us could end up with somebody at the door just like you did. But explain to us how it escalated to the police, because Prevent officers, as far as we're aware, can be anybody from a local authority official to a health official to a professional. So when did this jump from Prevent to all of a sudden you ended up, did you open the door and the police were suddenly at the door?
Prevent was initially essentially dealing with my controversial opinions, and I told them point blank, I'm not interested. But how it kind of escalated to the police was, to be honest, it was a bit of my fault. But the college tried to report me for a hate crime to the police, and the police, made an investigation purely based on that message I sent online, and their conclusion was no further action, and this wasn't like their place to, or this wasn't I guess kind of, this wasn't, because it wasn't like a big enough offense from what I got told and everything. This wasn't a big enough offense to make a arrest or anything. And it was very quick. Within 2 weeks, it took 2 weeks for them to contact me, and the only contact I had with the police was a knock on my door to say, are you aware there's been this investigation which the college has reported? We just want to get your side on it. And then within about an hour, they said, yeah, it's quite clear that this was just a simple, teenage, and this is our opinion on it. Just try not to, try not to say anything, I guess, anti-Semitic or like that online, which it was referred to as. But yeah, what was quite interesting about all of it was the girl who complained to the college. Her dad was running for a political role from the Conservative Party to be the local member of Parliament. The local councillor. The local councillor and Conservative councillor. And these visions were happening right as I got suspended, which I thought was quite weird. And looking into it, they actually had ties with the defense ministry and the Israeli government, because they were a contractor for the Israeli government as well, which I thought was very suspicious as well. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's just a whole wow story, isn't it? James, Let's come to you, because this is obviously taken a huge toll. And even though Saed said, it was fairly quick with the police, it was only a couple of weeks. I mean, that for anybody, let alone a young man who's studying at college and just wants to get on with his life, that must do extraordinary things to your mental health. And I mean, how many people are you seeing coming through your organisation, Students Against Tyranny? I mean, I would like to think not many, but I've got a horrible feeling you're going to say it's quite a few. But how are you coping with all these people?
It's quite a few. There's a lot of them. I think universities, I think everyone these days, they love diversity, but they don't like diversity of opinion. That's the one type of diversity everyone seems to hate, is the diversity of opinion and free thought. As you mentioned earlier, right? Universities used to be bastions of free speech, a marketplace of ideas where you would go to discover new concepts, new ideologies. Whereas these days it's the complete opposite. You walk around the Freshers' Fair and all you see are left-wing societies, like, for example, Bradford Student Union. They have an Afghanistan society, an LGBTQ society, an Islam society. They have all these societies, but they don't have a debating society, a free speech society, a conservative society, a UKIP society. They have nothing on the right wing of things, nothing at all. And that seems to be a growing theme among every single university. There was an incident recently at Bristol University, which has now banned the national anthem. You're not allowed to sing the national anthem anymore. And what else did they do before that? They actually banned the army from promoting themselves on campus. The army wasn't allowed to be there either. Yet you can have all of these very left-wing societies which promotes diversity and inclusion and all of that. So it seems you can have any opinion as long as it goes with the status quo. And the concerning part of this is because a lot of people, they'll be asking themselves, well, how does this concern me? Well, if you look at any communist regime, and Saed mentioned them earlier, if you look at the Khmer Rouge, Mao's Cultural Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Vietnamese Revolution, every single Marx-inspired revolution of the proletariat, they always utilize the work of the students, primarily through ideological subversions, the demoralization of the West. But every single communist regime throughout history, and that's no exaggeration, every single one of them utilized students to their advantage. And the concerning part is that's how they started, right? So if that's how they started in, I don't know, in the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia or the Mao's Cultural Revolution in China, which both were equally responsible for millions and millions of deaths, then and that's now being done in the UK, that should be concerning to everyone, that what's happening right now is a communist style revolution that is aiming to implement a dictatorship of the bourgeois. So that's what we're seeing right now, and that's what I think the kind of shutdown of free speech is orientating. I think we're heading down a very scary path of communism, fascism, a fascist utopia. And the only way we can stop this is by reverting universities to how they used to be. I think it was quite normal back in the day for a young person to go to university, become a socialist, and then come out of university, get a job, and then become anti-socialist because they realize that the money they earn they want to keep. Right, that was normal back in the day. But these days, I don't think anyone's growing out of it because people aren't being given reality checks. Everyone is pussyfooting around and stepping on eggshells around these people, never giving them a reality check of what life is actually about. And we see this with transgenders entering women's bathrooms. No one's stepping. People these days, as much as everyone disagrees with it, no one's really standing up against it. I mean, you get the occasional person who will speak out against it, but the majority of people are very silent on the issue, and that's the most concerning part. Even the founder of the original Students Against Tyranny in Nazi Germany, what was her name? Sophie Scholl. She founded a group called the White Rose, and even she said the real harm is not done by the Nazis, it's done by the people who know what's going on but refuse to say anything. That's who's doing the real harm, and that's who's doing the real harm right now as well. And talking about Prevent, so Prevent was part of something called the Contest strategy. Contest was a strategy introduced in 2003 in response to 9/11, and it's what is it? It's the 4 Ps, right? So you have prevent, pursue, protect, and prepare. And it was set up by Sir David Omand, I think his name was. And the alleged aim of the strategy was the prevent part of the strategy was to identify and address the ideological causes of radicalization. They weren't just meant to focus on far-right extremism. The main other thing they were meant to focus on is Islamic extremism as well. Now, if you look at the figures, I believe it's like 46% of prevent referrals are far-right extremists, right? For far-right extremism, extremist opinions, and 22% are for Islamic extremism. 22% for Islamic extremism. You look at the figures online from the Home Office or for anything, Islamic extremism is arguably a much bigger issue than far-right extremism. I'm not saying that far-right extremism isn't an issue. Of course it is, right? Like any other form of radicalization and extremism, that is an issue that needs to be addressed and looked into. Yes, but how come the majority of Prevent referrals and the majority of Prevent's work is done on far-right extremism, far-right opinions, when those opinions most of the time are just, oh, there are only two genders, like that's an extremist view to have. How come the majority of Prevent's investigations are into that, but not Islamic extremism, when if you look into it, Islamic extremism is a much bigger threat to the West than far-right extremism ever is and ever was. It's just never made any sense to me why that's the case. Saeed's a very brave lad, so we do massively appreciate him coming to us. And unfortunately, our time is so stretched with so many other issues that are going on, and we don't have the funding to be on all of this constantly, because we have to have jobs and all of that as well. You know, I've been kicked out of university, so we all have to fund this ourselves, so it becomes very expensive. Me and Dylan actually went to visit Saeed recently at his college, and we handed out leaflets to, I think, the majority of students there, which was absolutely fantastic. I mean, a few threw them on the floor as to be expected, but it was an absolutely great day. I think Piers Corbyn came down as well, and a few others as well. So it was an absolutely fantastic day, and we did a lot of outreach to young people, which is what we're trying to do, is outreach. So if you do want to join Students Against Tyranny, which you can do for free, it's studentsagainsttyranny.com/join, where you can join myself, Saed, Dylan, and all the other students that we've got in our ranks, and fight back against what is going on campus.
James, this is wonderful to hear that your organisation is out there for students. And I really want this message, you know, for people that are watching this, please send to, if you've got family members at uni or at college, please send this video to them, because I'm guessing, James, I'm going to ask you specifically actually about how isolated some students must be feeling at the moment. I mean, listening to Saeed, to be quite honest with you, if I had gone through something like that, or one of my sons, I have 4 sons, if one of my sons had gone through something like that, I can't imagine the mental trauma going forward, because you're always watching what you're saying, or got to be careful what you put online, start to feel maybe slightly concerned that anything that you could say could be taken in the wrong way. I mean, how is this affecting students? I mean, you're obviously not able to help with regards to mental health. How are you able to refer students for some mental health support, or to for any psychological support at all, or are they literally on their own?
The issue is that there's not an organisation that I found that I particularly trust in terms of mental health. You know, there are organisations that exist like CAMS, but the problem is if you have these wrong opinions, they're going to tell you they're wrong opinions. So I don't think there's any organisation that we've trusted enough that we're willing to work with in terms of mental health. But I'll tell you the story of, like, there's a young lad we've been working with in London who goes to a liberal arts college. These two know who he is, and he called me. Like, I think he was only at university for a week, and he called me because apparently it had been leaked who he was or something. Leaked, you know, everyone knew what his opinions were. They were turning him into a meme. He was getting messages all the time. I think he had a few death threats from Antifa as well. And he said he never felt so alone. In his student accommodation where he lived, there were, again, members of Antifa there as well, literally living next door to him. And he was made to feel like an outcast. He was completely persecuted and bullied for having these conservative viewpoints. He's actually left university now because he said they never felt so alone. Now, during this time, he actually had a message off one of our other friends who claimed to be working with who claimed to be working with the kind of teachers at the university. And this person had been in contact with us for a while and was letting us know, oh yeah, someone's actually reported this guy for saying that all LGBTQ people are pedos, which is something he never said, right? But we later found out that the guy who told us this is actually a member of Antifa who infiltrated Students Against Tyranny. So we actually have a lot of messages all the time of young people who are feeling quite lonely and depressed over feeling like they have so-called wrong opinions. And it's definitely not on. It's a massive issue. I mean, everyone wants to talk about Mental Health Awareness Week and mental health this, mental health that. So, I've got bipolar disorder, and they like there's videos online of like women listing like seven different mental health disorders that they've apparently got. Like they're like listing them like they're a superhero. Do you get what I mean? And that's something we see a lot at the moment. It's this very, very victim mentality where it's popular to have these mental health issues, but then someone who does actually have it that's caused by the far left, and for some reason no one wants to talk about it. But unfortunately, it's a very big issue among campuses where where students are being bullied for having these opinions. And I mean, what if one day someone does actually decide to commit suicide because they've had their university taken from them, which in terms has their job taken, which in terms stops them and limits them from getting a job in the future? These are questions that needs to be asked, and unfortunately, no one's asking them, if that makes sense.
James, our audience watching now, our viewers, what can they do? What would you like us to do to help you, or to help your cause, or to help students? What's your big message for people like me watching?
Firstly, there's something that I don't think a lot of people are aware of, and they should be. There is something in the UK called Confucius Institutes. Now, if you don't know what a Confucius Institute is, it's pretty much it's a language and culture center for China here in the UK. And they are partnered with the majority of universities, right? If you look into your nearest university, chances are it'll be paired with a Chinese university as well as a Confucius Institute. Now, the problem with a lot of these Confucius Institutes, they have the leaders of these Confucius Institutes are paired with something called the United Front Work Department, which is overseen and is a part of the Chinese Communist Party propaganda center. Yeah, so you've got universities that are literally indirectly paired with propaganda centers within China, right? So you've got all of these things happening and no one is aware of them. So firstly, what I'm going to suggest that you do is look into these Confucius Institutes, look into how alarming they are, right? And I've been banned from Twitter now, so if you can give us a follow on Telegram, Students Against Tyranny Official. We are trying to bring out the message to as many people as possible what is going on in these universities. You've got universities left, right and centre that are banning and removing debating societies and free speech societies. You've got universities that are paired with Chinese universities who are also paired with Confucius Institutes, which are overseen by by propaganda centres within China. You've got the Marxism Festival of Socialist Ideas being held at SOAS University of London, which also promotes cultural Marxism, which is where they're trying to erode the culture in the West in order to revert people back to their inherent class values. That's how cultural Marxism was founded. So you've got all of these issues. Just look into it, man. Just research it. Spread the message as much as you can. Let people know what is going on. And also, if you can, there's a new university free speech TSAR as well, called Arif Ahmed, and his job is as part of his job was created as part of the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Bill that recently passed. Send him a letter. If you can send him a letter or an email, just send him a letter and email on Saed's behalf, letting them know that you're not happy with what has been going on in these universities, with free speech not being upheld, with students being bullied, with having their education taken from them, being referred to Prevent for absolutely no reason. Just let him know. right? And the more emails he gets and the more letters he gets, I mean, I've requested a meeting with him and he hasn't responded. The more emails and letters he gets, the higher chance there is of him actually doing something. I mean, they have the power to now. The Higher Education Freedom of Speech Bill enables them the power to do something about this, and they still aren't. So yeah, just send him a letter, research us, give us a follow on Telegram, and yeah, just please help us support Saed.
Thank you so much for that, James. And I think for our viewers, because obviously we've changed the name of this young gentleman to Saed, when you write, if you could just say that this is the young gentleman that you've seen on UKColumn, then that will be sufficient. And I think that that's a great thing to do. And I think the other thing too, and I know we don't want to talk about money because it's never good to talk about money, but Students Against Tyranny have got a donate page, and we'll make sure that the link of that is in the article beneath. So before I go to Dylan, let me just finish for a minute, Saed, with one last question for you, because I think everybody's going to be asking, where are you now? You know, you've been kicked out of college. Presumably your education has dissipated. Can you continue to study? How is your life progressing forward? Do you still have the ambitions that you did have before you got expelled?
I have managed to seek alternative education. However, that has come with a massive cost, because I have had to seek, like private exams and things. That has come with a cost of about £12,000. When you count in private tutoring and everything, that's about £12,000. I hope to be at university in the next few years, hopefully, and by then I hope I'll be on the course which I want to do, hopefully to study law, and I hope this would be my education for the future. That's all I can really say about that.
For sure from me, and I know many people that are watching and viewing now will want to thank you for standing up and standing out and speaking up against all of this, because you're young and your whole life's ahead of you. And so we understand that anything that you say could jeopardize the rest of your life. And we wish you luck and love moving forwards. And we're so grateful to your friend Dylan, who we're going to come to now, and to also James and Students Against Tyranny for supporting you through this absolute nightmare. Dylan, can we throw to you for your last word, because you've witnessed this, you've watched what Saed has had to go through, you've worked with Students Against Tyranny, and you're seeing a lot more going on around you. What would be your last word to people watching?
I would say for those who are watching is that if you do know any young people who are feeling isolated for the things that they know, whether it's just being against the narrative or other things that we know are part of the cabal or New World Order agendas, really, I'd say introduce them to Students Against Tyranny and Youth for Freedom UK, because that is probably the most ideal thing to do to support those who are aged 18 to 30, whether you're a student or not, because we need unity more than to give them such confidence and to, make sure they don't feel afraid to be themselves, which clearly, well, the status quo will not allow them to, but we can still be their rock, if you will, their support. And we hope if we can all work together to stand up against all of this.
We thank you for that. And I'm going to come to you, Saed, for your last word. What would you like whoever to hear, your peer group, the government, the education establishment? What are your last words to those of our audience that are listening?
I just want everyone to know that this can't happen again. You can disagree with someone. You might not want to be friends with someone because of their opinions. You might want to call them names, whatever. Fine, you've got a right to disagree. But when it becomes a problem is when it is state-sanctioned persecution. You have not got a right to expel someone based on their beliefs, based on their private thoughts. That's a violation of the human rights. And I will call people out on it when I see it, because a violation of human rights in terms of freedom of thought and freedom of education is not acceptable at all. And my last word would be this. I might not agree with everything someone has to say, but I will die for their right to be able to say it. Thank you.
Bravo. And James, for all of our wonderful students all over the country, your last words for them.
All I have to say is don't be afraid. Don't let them bully you. At the end of the day, and this goes to the people who don't agree with what I have to say here as well, you're going to go through life not agreeing with everyone. And that's something you need to get used to. You may sit here now and cry over getting misgendered, over someone using your wrong pronouns, but you are going to go through life when you enter the workforce dealing with people who disagree with you, who you don't like. That's just a fact of life. To then run around calling for their free speech to be cancelled, for their voice to be silenced, for them to be fired from their jobs, just purely because you disagree with them, is disgraceful. And one day you will get that reality check, that not everything is going to go your way. But to the students who do agree with us here, don't be afraid. Don't let them bully you into submission, into shutting up. Your voice matters, especially here at Students Against Tyranny. The more of us that stand up and speak out against what is going on, the likelihood decreases of them being able to continue down the path we are headed. As Saed said as well, you may not like what someone says, but you should defend their right to say it.